Okay, you're rolling.
Not yet, I'm not. There are 3 kinds of rolling that we're going to talk about that are in your handout. 2 of them I use a lot less. The one we're going to start with is my preferred form of rolling. It is the more traditional form of rolling that I learned through my martial arts practice. 2 of them utilize the head of the 5th metacarpal, and the one I like the most does. This is a wonderful tool that you probably aren't using to do massage currently. It takes a lot of small joints out of the equation because we're not using the finger at all. We're pushing straight with the metacarpal. And because it orients our hand generally in what they call half pronation, half supination, the handshake kind of posture, I'm not firing my flexors and extensors when I use this, other than some stabilization to keep my wrist straight. We are going to fire some of the carpi muscles for rolling. So we're going to fire our flexor and extensor carpi radialis and ulnaris group to move the wrist through radial and ulnar deviation. Depending on where you went to school, you may have learned these motions as wrist abduction and wrist adduction. The problem with that is no one stands in anatomical position. And as soon as I go here, which one is which? So instead of trying to remember that this is technically adduction and this is technically abduction, we use the bony landmarks. So this is radial deviation because I'm deviating towards the radius, and ulnar deviation because I'm deviating towards the ulna. And that's positionally independent. My hand can be back here and that's still radial and that's still, or ulnar, and that's still radial. So down here on the body, with my hands in the handshake, half pronation, half supination, radial deviation is the hitchhiker thumb, and ulnar deviation is going to be laying my knuckles and hand flat on her. We're going to be touching with all of this on the backside of the knuckles and the fingers, but our pressure has to just be through the knuckle, through the head of the 5th metacarpal. If we apply pressure with the backs of the fingers, we will automatically fire our extensor muscles to keep them from collapsing and being painful, and you'll overwork your extensor digitorum in a heartbeat. This sort of rolling like this will hurt your extensor digitorum and give you lateral epicondylitis and all sorts of no-nos. So we're going to keep the elbows down. I'm going to start with just my dominant hand. So my other hand can just hang out here in a rocking position. I'm going to start by ulnarly deviating my hand and placing the knuckle right next to the longissimus, or the erector spinae. I'm going to push my body forward, and as I do that, I'm going to roll my wrist through ulnar deviation, and then I'm going to relax and sit back. So I'm rolling and coming back. And let me know if I push too hard. You'll notice I'm not hitchhiking. My thumb is not doing this. That's working those extensor pollicis muscles uselessly. So my knuckles are relaxed, my fingers are relaxed, my thumb is down. And the wrist roll is really more about keeping that 5th metacarpal pushing into her body than it is about creating pressure. I want it to stay pointed at her. The movement gets its pressure all from my torso, all from my center, pushing out of my back leg. Notice she's moving around a ton. That's okay. Notice I am not sliding on the body. I'm not going like this across the surface. I'm purchasing, as my teacher would say, or sticking to one spot and applying pressure. So what I'm basically trying to do is think of the erector spinae as a bundle right here, and I'm compressing them diagonally in towards the spine and the lamina and vertebra body, diagonally like this. Start with your dominant hand first, but almost all rolling is done with both hands. But if you can get the hang of it with one, then you can place your developmentally disabled hand next to it, and it can kind of benefit from following that motion. These can be moved around on the body. We're going to do a lot of that when we do the Taiyong breakdown, but I'm not moving in the stroke. I'm moving between strokes. So if I'm walking, I create a stroke, and then I slide over and create a stroke, and I work my way down. For right now, just stick to the erector spinaes. We're going to talk about using this technique on the hip and do that some more. But for now, just the erector spinaes. One thing that I do that once you get the hang of this you can play with is I steal a page from Shiatsu, probably the only thing from Shiatsu that I actually use. They call mother-son hand, where they're basically planting one hand at the top of a channel and then working down. And I do that with rolling. So I'll park this one kind of right level with the superior angle of the scapula. And let me know again if I push too hard. And I'll start there, and as I work, my lower hand, inferior hand, works down till I run into the tailbone. And then you can either walk down to meet it with that, my left hand in this case, or if I'm up here doing this, it can walk back up. Doesn't have to move in a certain direction. Traditionally, they like to work from head to toe because the bladder channel where we're working on the back runs down the back of the body. But I don't think that directionality really makes much difference. So that's our traditional rolling using that radial to ulnar or ulnar to radial deviation.